People and Journeys. It's another wicked interview special. Oh my God, we have Leigh Matty from Romeo's daughter with us. Welcome, Leigh. How are you today?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you, Nigel and Trish. It's very lovely to be here with you.
Marvellous.
Thank you so much.
Whereabouts do you... Well, you're obviously UK. We love interviewing UK bands.
Yes.
Whereabouts in the UK are you?
Sorry,
Really?
to be exact.
Sorry, I was born in Kingston.
Well, I go to Kingston quite a lot.
Do you?
I see my voice went up then a lot.
It did, a lot.
That's from singing. I was singing too much today. It's kind of, yeah. Now, I live very close to a place called Weybridge, which is in Surrey.
Yes, I know it well.
Which is very leafy.
Leafy Weybridge?
Yes.
Yeah, I lived up in Teddington.
Leafy Weybridge.
Yeah, I lived up in Teddington for a number of years, so all that sort of area, so Weybridge, know it well, yeah.
Yeah, we're all from around this neck of the woods. One of the members lives in London, one lives in a place called Chorleywood, and yeah, so we're kind of all around the M25, which is terrible at the moment.
I was going to say, that's not a good place to be at the
No,
moment.
it's just awful. It's awful. It's like just like one big parking lot. It's just atrocious. Yeah.
So, look, fair to say, you are, like me, a mature rocker.
I beg your pardon, Nigel.
I know, right? Well, you've been around since the 80s, let's be honest. Romeo's daughter was born in the 80s, am I right?
We were born in the... Well, we weren't physically born in the 80s, but the band was born in the 80s. Actually, I was born in the 80s as well. I started very young.
I bet I was going to say that you started very young.
I started very young.
I was going to say that surprised me because I would have put it more like the 90s, but there we go.
You're such a smoozer.
So
actually, it was 89. The first album came out, so you were nearly there.
and so you made that when you were 5. That's a remarkable achievement to launch an album when you're 5 years old. Remarkable. So, Leigh, tell us how did Romeo's daughter, well, there's two things I want to get to really. How you started and how you have kept going, to where you are today in terms of like how have you survived these decades, and how would so let's start. So you started in the 80s, but if anybody's coming up to you and say, "Oh, Leigh, I hear you're in a band. What sort of music do you play then?" Because that's what they talk like in Surrey, of course, in Weybridge. So tell me more about this damn rock and roll you deal with. So describe your music.
Do you know, that's really a really difficult question, and people sometimes ask me that, and it's so difficult to explain. Also, I don't think we kind of fit in any main genre. One of the issues that we always had way back with radio play was that the powers that be in the radio stations could never make up their minds whether we were a pop band or we were a rock band. And so we kind of fell a little bit like a Dan Reed Network. Do you remember Dan Reed Network? Who were they a funk band? Were they a rock band? I mean, I don't really know why you have to fall into a genre. You either kind of like the music or you don't. But I kind of think we're like maybe like we're not even indie rock. We're rock, but we're not AOR. We're not AOR. I don't know, Nigel. You would probably tell me what you thought our music genre.
Go on, Nigel, tell her.
What would you say, Nigel?
Well, I would say you're definitely what I would term as a classic rock band, more like in that mould of sort of like Boston and Heart and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
But a little bit not so melodic as those, so a little bit more edgy. Yeah. I would put you kind of in that that sort of genre, really. If I'm honest, and that's mature because like. Obviously, we'll talk about your album that you released was about a year and a half ago, wasn't it? And I was listening to the 2015 album, and then you sent the album through for us to listen to because it's not on Amazon Music, etc. And was it 8 years difference between the albums? And there's definitely a more modern kind of vibe or feel, or a little bit more edgy, I thought anyway. To the current album.
We went for that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you thought that because that's what we went for. Yeah. Also, we don't have a keyboard player anymore, so that's also made a difference. to our sound to a certain extent.
Okay.
The less synth, the better. That's what I say.
Yes.
I've had enough of synth. Synth is out for me now.
Synth is out.
Synth is out.
Synth isn't in anymore.
No. So I have spoken, therefore synth is out. How did it all start? So I wouldn't put down Leafy Weybridge as a like heart-throbbing rock and roll.
No, I didn't live in. No, I certainly didn't live in Weybridge then. I lived right in the centre of London. I lived in Harley Street, weirdly enough, above a doctor's office. I was poor as a church mouse, but I could afford this place in Harley Street. And I met Craig through an ad that they put out in a magazine, and they were looking for a rock singer. And I, at that point, wasn't 100% sure that I actually was a rock singer. I kind of was. I'd been in a few kind of different bands. I'd been in a more of a vocal kind of 3-piece vocal band, and I was brought up very much. My dad loved jazz music and blues, and I thought maybe that was kind of more of the genre I was going to go to. But Craig and I think it was 1985, the beginning of 1985, we had this telephone conversation. And we just hit it off straight away. You know, like sometimes you just meet your kind of your person, not romantically. You know, just like we just really, really liked each other straight away, and had a lot of things in common about the music that we liked. And I went to this audition in Nomis, which was this I think it might even still be there, this amazing rehearsal studio, really glamorous studio that all the rock stars used to go to, and pop stars. And they had this really huge audition. And there were so many rock chicks there. It was incredible. I looked like a punk rocker. I had really, really short punk hair. I didn't fit the bill way I looked at all for the band, what they thought that they wanted. But anyway, they gave me these 3 songs to sing, and I sang them, and they just kind of decided that they liked me, and they said, you can join as long as you grow your hair. Hey. that was like the most important thing. They were like, will you grow your hair? I went, all right, I'll grow my hair. And it never stopped, as you can see. It's still growing.
So back in 1985, when you were talking to Craig and you were saying about your musical influences, so what was at that time then? Because I remember 1985 and all that sort of period very vividly. So what was at the time the music that you were kind of listening to that resonated between you and Craig then?
Do you know, I remember that he asked me to sing. There was some weird song. They asked me to sing a Pat Benatar song.
Yeah.
hit me with your best shot. That was a Pat Benatar song. So that was kind of. They asked me to do. Oh, I want to know what love is, because that was like really like one. You know what I mean? Start low and then go really high. And I can't remember what the third song was. But at the time we were. I suppose. We got together in 85, but we didn't actually release our album until end of 1988. So we had 4 years, and within that time, obviously, there was, Def Leppard were like really, really big. Obviously, we hadn't started working with Mutt yet then. He kind of came after that. So there was Def Leppard, but I kind of have always very much been into the West Coast, like, the Eagles, Doobie Brothers, the Police. I loved the Police, were probably my favorite band at the time. Craig's kind of come from very much like a folk background. He's the most amazing folk guitarist. So he kind of came from folk, but I'm trying. Oh, his favorite band is Rush, which is not my favorite band, to be honest. It's not, but Rush for him is like, so we came from very different kind of musical backgrounds, but we kind of gelled when he would write something and I would sing it, or we just instantly had that thing where I kind of identified with what he wrote and he identified with what I sounded like. So it was a very easy kind of like a blending of talents, I suppose. I mean, he is a phenomenal songwriter. Tom Petty, we thought maybe we were going to be like, so we love Tom Petty. But obviously we just kind of sounded like us, really. We didn't sound like anybody else at that time. There were also very few female-fronted singers around at the time. I mean, obviously Heart were huge in America, and there were some big kind of female-fronted bands in America, but in the UK there was hardly anybody, which was quite interesting because that kind of was a little bit of a hurdle to get over. So I think we just made our own sound very quickly, and then we worked with Mutt, and then Mutt completely embedded our sound, because working with him, he was such an extraordinarily talented guy, and we learned so much. You know, we saw him work the desk. We moved into his house for a little bit, and everything that we learned from him made us. The first album of Romeo's Daughter was that's us, and we've never lost that. You know, even though we haven't had Mutt around to produce and to help us, you know, we still have never lost, I don't think, that sound. But as you said, which I'm very pleased you said, Nigel, we sound a little bit more edgy now, and we sound like we're a bit more. We never just wanted to just keep that 80s kind of AOR thing going. Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Well, me and Craig were probably at the same Rush concert in the 80s, because one of the most memorable.
You're also a mad Rush fan.
Well, I was back in the 80s. Then they went a bit more prog rock, but I thought they were one of the best shows, light shows, I think, at the time that I kind of saw. Okay, so the 80s was a fast. 80s was very, very fast moving kind of period for music. So how come 3 years before, nearly 3-4 years before you released an album then?
Because we didn't get a deal.
Right.
We didn't have a record deal. I think we ended up getting the record deal in maybe 1986 or 7, maybe. No, maybe 87, because it didn't actually take us that long to record the album once we got going. And then I think they released it at the end of 88, and we started kind of properly pushing it out in 1989.
So how come you got the record deal then? What was that tipping point? Did they see you live, or how did that come about?
No, they... Well, Mutt actually helped us get the deal, because Mutt heard this one song in particular that we had demoed called Stay With Me Tonight, which is on the first album, our first album, and he really, really loved it. And he decided that he would do some demos with us. And we did some demos with him. We got really well with him. And then he was working a lot with Jive Records. And I think, if I remember correctly, he kind of was probably quite instrumental in us getting that deal. It was quite a thing, I suppose, at the time, because he was working with, you know, Bryan Adams and Def Leppard and Billy Idol, and not Billy Idol, Billy Ocean, and he was so busy, you know, with all these different projects, the Cars, I mean, you name it. He was like, he was with so for him to kind of just go, okay, I like you. Also to work with me was great, because he didn't like working at the time with female singers. He went on to marry one after working with us. Yeah, Shania Twain. And I think you can hear very much essences of Romeo's Daughter in the first Shania Twain album that he did, which is also quite interesting. So that was just phenomenal. I mean, for us to have that experience of working with him.
So what's been the highest point in terms of your Romeo's Daughter's career, in terms of record sales or awards, or so what? At what point did you hit the highest point of your journey?
Do you know, Nigel, we've had one of those very, very weird journeys where we released the first album in 1988 even, rather than late 88 into 89. I think things would have been quite different for us. The album was very, very well received in the States. And we went over and did this radio tour around the whole of the States. And the songs, our first single was, I think it was Don't Break My Heart. I think it was Don't Break My Heart. And then, but then Heaven in the Backseat, like, we got Freddie from Elm Street on the film, and the video was out, and that was all. Everything seemed to be just doing fantastically well, and we seemed like we were on the cusp of really breaking through in America, which obviously it was a very important thing to do in those times if you were a rock band. I remember the highlight for me and Craig was we were in LA, and we'd gone on this as I said, this radio tour. We never actually played live in America, which is ridiculous. But anyway, we were in America, we were in LA, and we were walking along Sunset, and we walked into Tower Records because we had been told that our album was out in Tower Records. You know, the big yellow, have you seen that on Sunset? And we walked in and there was a huge cutout of me, life-size cutout of me in Tower Records. And we were like, oh my God, we couldn't get over it. We were absolutely...
My work here is done. My work here is done. That's it. I can retire. Yeah.
No mobile phones then to take a picture either.
No, nothing. We didn't have anything on us. We were like, I was like, do you think anybody would notice if I walked out with myself? But we didn't. But that was pretty exciting, and just like having the radio on in the car over there, and our song coming on the radio, and all of that stuff, you know, is pretty mind blowing. Like when you're like young musicians, and this is your first kind of foray into this kind of world. But unfortunately, everything was too late. We were always too late for everything. This is the story of our lives. We were too late. There were some issues with management. Our manager here didn't want us to get management there, even though there was a really big manager who wanted to manage us. So we didn't have that. We should have done that very early on. We should have got management there. There was issues between the record B, we were with BMG, and then BMG were all weird. There's listen, you know, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, what can you do about it?
Well,
if we'd have known what was happening.
It was frustrating, wasn't it, during that period, because that sort of music, I mean, I was a massive Magnum fan and Whitesnake fan and all of that sort of stuff, and then late 80s, suddenly Nirvana came on the scene, and it literally changed that landscape, and suddenly that sort of 80s kind of rock ballady kind of music just went out of fashion, didn't it?
No, absolutely.
Went out of fashion.
Absolutely.
And
and
obviously
overnight.
Guns N' Roses obviously started to make that change, and Nirvana came in. And it was just like, you know, I remember Magnum getting like, I was so happy that they were on top of the pops, and you know, and then suddenly, yeah, it all kind of changed.
I know.
Fast moving, but there we go. So, okay, and so. One of the things that struck me, because we interview a lot of bands, is like, if you've been around for the length of time you've been around, 5 albums isn't a lot, really. It's not prolific, is it?
Not at all. Well, because we disbanded in 1994, and we didn't actually work together for 18 years.
Right.
We were completely finished for 18 years, and we only got together for, we were invited to play Firefest in 2009 in Nottingham, and we actually went, oh great, let's just do it for old time's sake. And we went down so well, we didn't even know anybody would know who we were, because obviously this is before social media, before anything. We had no idea that anybody knew who we were. We had very little kind of faith in ourselves, and we just thought that was that. You know what I mean? Life goes on. We all did something else. But we got together in 2009. And so from 2009, we made Spin, Rapture, Slipstream, and we've had an acoustic EP. So we've had 4 since then, which also doesn't seem, it's ridiculous, but we only put stuff out when we think we've got an album worthy of it. And we're all really, really busy doing other, you know,
so what
making
did you
livings.
do? You pivoted away from a rock and roll career. What did you end up doing?
I actually own a voiceover agency. Yeah.
What a shot!
And
what a shot! I'm getting some work now. I've always wanted to be a voiceover artist.
I became a voice agent for a company, and then I left and I started my own agency. So rather bizarre, but a really nice career actually. And interestingly, that I mean, I don't obviously book myself. I'm not a voice artist, but I'm an agent for voice artists.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so who's the band? What's the German band? He's a voiceover artist, isn't he?
What was
Stefan. No.
Stefan Hunter.
Kick Hunter. We interviewed Stefan from Kick Hunter, and he does voiceover ads and stuff as well. He's amazing. He's got an amazing voice, hasn't he? But,
right.
Okay, and so now we're going to go over to the Trish section of the show, because if I don't, I will get a WhatsApp going, it's my turn. Trish, welcome to the show. It's the Trish White section.
Oh, God, you've all been waiting for this part, haven't you?
And swiftly moving on. So, Leigh. I'm just joking.
I bet you they clap him around the head.
How would you say your creative process differs from album to album?
Actually, it has differed from album to album because of technology and the way we get together to work together. So obviously, in the early days, you would all be together in the studio. You would write, you would play, you would come up with anything. Nowadays, it's very different in that Craig, who is the guitarist and songwriter and Romeo's daughter, has got a fantastic studio in his house. He will kind of come up with riffs. We will rehearse them live. We'll go through them. We'll say, do we like this? What do we think about this? We'll go through them and gobbledygook, no proper lyrics, just kind of play through them, see what we think. And then when they turn into songs, he will then record the main demos. I will then go and work with him. I will then record the vocals. Then the drummer will come around. Sometimes the drummer actually records them at his studio. We just send him everything, or else he'll come around just to Craig. It's very, very different. It's much, when you know what you're actually working towards and when you have your songs, it's fantastic. It's quite quick. This is one of the reasons why we don't make a lot of albums, because there's a lot of songs that are out there, but we focus on the ones that we think are the strongest, the ones that we're proud of. We don't want any album fillers. I mean, obviously you always get a couple of album fillers, but we try not to do that. We try to make sure that whatever goes on an album is the best song that it can be for that album. And so it's quite different, Trish. Because also we're so busy, the other guys, they play in other bands, they have other business, I have my business. It's trying to find the time to give it the time that it's worth. And so I very much I'm very lucky in my business. I have great staff. And so for me, this is my old ego. I'm Leigh being the voiceover agent, and when I'm in Romeo's daughter, it's like I just love that so much. The joy it brings me to sing. I can't even, talk about endorphin release. It's just miraculous. Anybody, I always say to people, even if they can't sing, just go and just join just do it, because it makes you feel so damn good. Unless you have a cold, which I did a couple of weeks ago, and I had to do 3 gigs on the trot. That wasn't so good, but I got through it. So yeah, the whole process is very different now because life has changed and technology has changed.
How did you choose the name of the band?
Now that's quite interesting because we had a lot of different, and we couldn't decide on any of them, and nobody liked any of the names that we were coming up with. And in a song we have called Cry Myself to Sleep at Night, there's a line that it says, I'm a Romeo's daughter, which actually is wonderful because when we play this now, everybody sings it in the audience because they know. And it was Mutt, and he went, I'm fed up with you trying to decide on a bloody name. What about Romeo's daughter? And we were like, well, he didn't have a daughter. And we were like, well, yeah, that's the whole point. And then they were waiting for us to give them a name because the album was ready to press, and we couldn't decide. So we went, okay, we'll do Romeo's daughter. And that's how we became Romeo's daughter. It's not exciting at all. It's just like, needs must. Yeah.
Okay, my final question before I hand back to Nigel is, on the Slipstream album, what is your favourite track?
Do you know what? I'm going to have a quick look. Because I happen to have one here, funnily enough. I would say that really hard to choose a favourite. I've actually got Slipstream, I can honestly say, is my most favourite album that we've actually done since our first album. I think it's the strongest. I think every song is kind of, the more you listen to it, it's like a little bit of an earwormy thing. I really like do I have to choose one? All right, we'll go, but It's one of my favorites. I've got a couple on here that are my favorites.
You can pick two. You can go two. We'll give
all right, I'll go Over You and
what was that?
A ballad. I'm gonna. How does it feel? Which is the ballad. Ballad. I'm gonna ballad, but yeah. You only just got the album, so you won't have a favourite yet. But if you listen to it, you'll.
Over You stuck out. In fairness, I mean, I only listened to it twice, and Over You kind of stuck out for me as well. So, but, yeah.
Sorry, which you just got off this? Just what did you say?
You.
Oh, Over
yeah,
right.
You mentioned Over You, and that kind of stuck out for me as well a little bit. But but I haven't had chance to listen to it a lot.
Yeah.
And Thinking About You, I really like.
Funnily enough, we were playing that today. We're going to be playing that.
On the set list.
We're putting it in the set, Trish.
So talk to me about your tour then. So when do you start your tour, and when do you go?
We've done a slightly unusual thing. Last weekend, or the weekend before last, we've actually just recorded an acoustic live album. Yeah, we went to a place called Barnoldswick, which is this great place up in Yorkshire. It's a great venue, and we did 3 gigs, and we recorded all of them, and we played 27 of our songs acoustically. Wow. Yeah, so it was really successful actually, and it works very well with us as an acoustic. We all play though. We have drums and bass, acoustic bass, which was really, really lovely, and I enjoy it very much. Kind of just sitting and singing, and so we've done that. We did that in January, and we've actually only got 2 more gigs, electric gigs this month. At the end of the month, 28th of March, we're at the Garage in London, and then on the 30th we're at the Carlisle in Hastings. And then, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any gigs over the summer, but we're touring. The live album will be out in October, and we're then going to be touring the live acoustic album. So we're going to be going out acoustic again in October and November.
Fantastic. Absolutely amazing. And so, what do you think, or where do you think you're going to be? Do you foresee yourself? Because it's quite remarkable you saying about singing and music being an endorphin rush. I mean, we went and had a karaoke party, and I know that everybody was going, oh, no, about this. So the only way to do that is just get straight on, singing terribly badly, which I do on purpose, of course, just to put everybody at ease.
Of course.
Yeah, I put everybody at ease, and and then they can see how much fun they're going to have, and everybody is singing, and you can feel the endorphins. We had this private room, and you can feel the endorphins and the fun and enjoyment that it actually has. So, do you foresee yourself keeping on with Romeo's Daughter now for the next 10 years, 20 years? I mean, you're still young, so you've still got a long time to go, haven't you?
Well, thank you, Nigel.
Pleasure.
Listen, I would love to do that. Whether it's viable or not is not really up to me. It's really Craig, who is very important, because obviously he comes up with the original song ideas, and so it's very tough. I'll be absolutely honest with you. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough getting people to come down and see you. It's tough. Although I'm saying live is tough, but actually Slipstream has been our most successful album to date. We've sold lots of them. It also was the #1 AOR album in classic rock at the end of last year, 2024. So it's done well for us, and it's kind of very highly regarded. And so that's really helps us to kind of make a decision about what we're going to do next.
Yeah.
But obviously having an acoustic album and actually playing a lot of our old songs and our new songs in this different way kind of gives us a year reprieve to decide what we're going to do going forward.
Do you think, because obviously you didn't release the album on Amazon or Spotify,
best thing we ever did.
Is that? Yeah. Do you think that, or?
Oh my goodness!
Because in this modern age, with accessibility to music, I wouldn't have come across your music otherwise. So.
Well, I'll tell you, it'll go on. It'll go on soon. But basically, when you're doing everything your own, we're a cottage industry, so we I do all the artwork. We record, we produce, we do everything ourselves. There's nobody that. So this all costs money. So you have to be a viable business to actually be able to carry this on. So we decided, because we have a very good fan base, we did a pre-sale of Slipstream, which did incredibly well, and then we just sold them. We thought, we're not, as soon as it goes on a streaming service, we'd had it. Nobody is going to buy this album from us. So we held out on it, and it was fantastic that we did that, because I know that maybe it hasn't gone out to a bigger audience, but it will now, because it's kind of had its shelf life, and now we can afford to do that. We also have a link that you can just download it, but you have to pay for the download. So everything has just come through our shop. And really, it's the only way you can actually keep doing it. I mean, I don't understand the bands that make these albums. They put them on the streaming service. They make nothing. They make absolutely nothing. They're just giving it away. And we can't do that. There's no point in doing that. And if your fans love you and they want to support you, they will pay 15 quid to buy your album.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer to me, really.
Leigh, on that note, I will wrap up this wonderful, amazing interview with an amazing singer.
Thank you, guys.
Ever so much. For,
it's really nice to meet you.
And I say that because I worked in Weybridge for many years at what was called Plessy Naval Systems at the time, and one of my bosses would always, his thing was, "Thank you ever so." That was his thing. His thing was thank you ever so, and that was his thing. So I've always remembered that, and it reminded me when you say you're from Weybridge. So I will end with that by saying thank you ever so, and keep on rocking. And thank you for joining us, Leah. And
see you in a couple of weeks, Trish.
Yes. Goodbye for everybody for now.
Thank you.